it's a little schedule change, but we're trying to get a little bit more accessibility to people. So welcome, thank you for joining us. Today, I have decided to make something that's a little bit more of a summer meal. Something that can be enjoyed on the patio on a very warm day, and something that is very versatile in use. So today we are going to make gazpacho and some crab cakes. Now, I know immediately when I say gazpacho, a lot of people are going to kind of go, ugh, I don't know about that. And a lot of that has to come from that Simpsons episode where Lisa tries to get everybody to go vegetarian and brings out the big bowl of cold tomato soup. Unfortunately, that description of what we're making is not completely incorrect. This is a cold soup. It is a fresh vegetable puree that is spicy, a little bit sweet, herbaceous, and it goes as a great complement or side dish with the crab cakes that we're going to make. Now, the crab cakes we're making today are very, very simple. We're going to be doing smaller ones, so they're little bite size, almost like little appetizers. Now, personally, my crab cake recipe is very, very basic. There's not a lot of ingredients involved. Now, we're going to get right into that because we're going to make the crab cakes. We're going to let them sit up for a little bit while we make the gazpacho before we cook them. So we're going to do a couple things back and forth, and we're going to kind of touch base back and forth. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make the crab cakes. Now, one of the reasons that we wanted to do crab cakes is because a certain young man that lives in this house has really gotten into SpongeBob lately, and of course Krabby Patties. So he asked, Daddy, could you make Krabby Patties? We're not going to make burger-sized ones. We're not going to make actual crab burgers, but we are going to make a version of this that you could turn into an actual burger. So right off the bat, what we're going to start with is the base of our crab cakes, our crab. Now, I'm using 2 cans. Now, I'm just going to check the weight. These are 170 grams each of canned crab meat that I've drained pretty well. Now, obviously, if you want to go incredibly fancy with this, or if you want to put that extra effort and time in, if you have availability, I would highly recommend getting small blue crabs, cooking them off, and then using that meat from the inside. This is canned blue crab meat, which is very, very light and very, very, it has a nice sweetness to it. So you can put a lot of extra things. Now, I have dried this out quite substantially, so all the moisture is gone. And now we're just going to add a few things to this. Now, like I said, I keep mine very basic. We are literally going to be adding, outside of a little bit of salt and pepper, a touch of red pepper, a little bit of green onion, and we're going to use about a tablespoon of mayonnaise to bind everything before we bread in panko breadcrumbs so we can get them a nice pan fry. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with the green onion. Now, I'm just going to trim my tips off the green onion real quick in my scrap bin. And now I'm going to do an incredibly fine cut on this, almost to a point of what's called a brunoise, which is this incredibly small dice. Now, I'm not going to do a traditional dice on this because we are just going to go across, but it is going to be as fine as I can get it with still maintaining individual pieces of green onion. So we're just going to get right into this, and we're going to start cutting that, again, really nice and fine. So we have really good distribution of all of this product all the way through the crab cake. Because there is nothing worse than getting really excited about having crab cakes and then ending up getting a crab cake where you don't have any of the other ingredients inside that accentuate the flavor of the crab itself. So we're just going to kind of go through, and I'm going to peel that little white membrane down at the bottom of the green onion because it's just a little tough. We're just going to get that really nice tender white on the inside. We're just going to keep going almost all the way down, right to there. Now we're going to take that off my knife, scoop up that green onion, and that's going to go right inside. Now, it doesn't look like a lot of green onion, and it really isn't a lot of green onion, but the flavor, because the crab is so understated and so mild, that you don't want to overpower this. Now, personally, I really like red pepper inside my crab cakes. It adds a little bit of a texture. There's going to be a little bit of a crunch on the inside, even though we are going to be cutting this incredibly small. But it also gives a really great color pop. Because the crab is very neutral in color and green onions are a little drab, this is going to really kind of pop your color. So when you break into your crab cakes, you're going to have this beautiful looking speckles on the inside. So for this recipe, oh, pardon me, I'm going to use 1/4 of this red pepper. All I'm going to do is take my knife, take one of the ends off, And that's all we're going to use. Save that for another day. Now what I'll like to do is I'll take my knife and I'll take that little bit of that white rib right out of there. Not that you have to, but it is a little bit of, it's slightly bitter, so you just want to take it out. So now what I'm going to do is with the flesh side down, to make it easier to cut, cutting on the inside, take your knife and we're going to julienne, make strips, very, very fine. Because then we're going to come back and we're going to dice these into very close to a brunoise dice. So we're going to take that red pepper off our knives, turn them across to the side, and then we are going to just dice through very, very small. Now take your time. Don't cut yourself. And just get all the way through. Now again, you want to have a really nice sharp knife to be able to do that, because if not, you're going to end up crushing and you're going to squish your red pepper. So now, once again, we're going to take that red pepper with our knife. We're just going to drop that right in there, really nice and quickly, just like so. All right, I'm just going to grab a piece of paper towel here, and then we are going to get on to the next step. Just wipe my knife off. Get the red pepper juice so it doesn't stain anything else off my cutting board. Now, as far as seasoning goes with this, we aren't going to go incredibly heavy. Now, I have decided that these ones I'm not going to be serving with any kind of dip along with them. I'm going to be serving them just as is. Personally, I like the taste of crab cakes. I want to be able to taste the crab cake, so I don't generally serve it with a dip. If you are, however, looking for something to dip this in, highly recommend a nice little spicy aioli or a Cajun dip, because it really kind of works with these flavors. So what I'm going to do here, I have my little salt belt, my scoop. So I'm going to put a little over, probably about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And I'm only going to do 3 cracks of black pepper, which is about 1 teaspoon. Now that I have all that in, I can grab my mayonnaise. Now, I have a little over 1 tablespoon, probably about closer to 2 tablespoons. And we're just going to add this directly into the crab cakes. Now, that little bit of mayonnaise is what's going to bind all of this together. So we're just going to take that spoon, we're going to start moving that around. Get all that going. Pull off that extra mayo into there. And we're just going to move that around a little bit more. Now, it looks like I might actually have to grab a little bit more mayonnaise out of the fridge, because that crab is a little on the dry side. Now, the easiest way to test, take a little bit of the crab in your hands and kind of squish it together. And if it stays together really well, you have enough. I unfortunately do not, so I'm going to grab a little bit out of my fridge here real quick, and we're just going to add probably about another 1.5 tablespoons of mayonnaise in there, just to make sure that it stays together really nicely. Now, that's the thing about obviously using recipes, is there are variables that you will not be able to account for. The dryness of the crab, the sweetness, all this kind of stuff. So it's all about adapting and making sure that the product that you're making is the product you are happy with. So now that I have a little bit more mayonnaise in here, I'm just going to get in here and we're going to start mixing this up. All the way around here. Okay, and now I can hear already that there's a little bit more moisture inside of here. And that now, these are looking like we should be able to form patties. Oh yeah, see, now we're talking. Now that you can kind of hold that just on the sides and it's not falling apart, now you're talking. Now you've got a good bind. So we're up to about 3 tablespoons of mayonnaise in this mixture. So we're going to move on to the next step, which is we are going to form these. Now, I like to pre-form all of my crab cakes onto a plate before I start breading them, to make sure that I have them all ready to go and we're at a good size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all this into the center of the bowl to kind of look at it and get an approximation of how many crab cakes I want to make. So we are going to grab cakes and make them just like that. And it's just like making a burger. All you're doing is you're adding a little bit of pressure to make sure that everything binds together, and you're forming it out just the same way as you would a burger patty, moving around the edges to try and firm everything up, just like that. So it looks like we're going to get about 5 or 6 really nice size ones out of these 2 cans, which is the perfect amount to serve as an accompaniment to our gazpacho. Because realistically, what I'm making here today is almost like a first course to like a really nice multi-course meal. If you're doing something, especially on the barbecue, and you want to kind of add a little appetizer or just a nice little kind of starting course, this is a great way to look at it. Well, it looks like we're going to get 5 out of this, which is just good enough. That's perfect. We don't need too many. Because realistically, this is kind of like a meal for 2. So we're just going to form those like that. I'm going to get this last one going. Let's get all that delicious crab. Squeeze it down nicely. And again, I'm just going to form that out in the palm of our hand. Moving it around, just like so. And pressing it down. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that you can use to simplify this process a little bit once I wash my hands. Now, growing up, whenever my dad would make any kind of burger, he would press them with a mason jar lid. Now, it turns out that a large bore mason jar lid, one of the deeper ones, is beyond perfect as far as making a beef burger. Now, I happen to have a mason jar here. Don't have a lid. But if you were using the lid to this mason jar, you're talking almost exactly the same size. So if you want a quicker way, have the insert into the lid, press it, turn around, pop that insert out. A little less mess on your hands. Makes great crab cakes. Now, next step, the breading process. So what I have here is some simple all-purpose flour, 2 whole eggs, which we're just going to crack and whip into the center bowl. And we're going to make sure we use 2 just so we have enough egg into there. Grab a whisk. Whisk these eyes up real quick. Because that's just going to be our egg wash. And then at the end, I'm using panko breadcrumbs. If you are not familiar with what panko is Japanese style breadcrumbs. Really all it means, alright, so our egg is nice and whipped, so that's good to go. So panko is just slightly more coarse breadcrumbs than your standard really fine breadcrumb. I find the texture it adds is spectacular. It adds a really nice dimension to the entire dish. So, what we're going to do is we are going to start. We're going to go flour, we're going to go egg, then we're going to go breadcrumb. Now, working in kitchens, the one thing that we were always taught is you have a wet hand and a dry hand. And that means that every wet product, so we're going to start by grabbing our crab cake off the plate into the flour. That's our wet hand. Now we'll take our dry hand, move that flour around, coat it all the way over, pick that up, knock off a little of the flour into the egg mixture. Now back to the wet hand. Take that egg mixture, roll it over once, get it nice and coated, take that out with your wet hand, drip off the extra egg into the panko, back to your dry hand. Shake, 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 get all that on there. Take your dry hand, flip over your crab cake, tap it down, put a little extra love into there, squeeze those breadcrumbs all over there, and out with your dry hand. And you have a beautifully breaded, ready to fry crab cake. So we're just going to continue that process. Again, wet hand, dry hand. Wet hand grabs, dry hand moves. Dry hand grabs, drop off some of the flour into the wet. Roll it over with your wet hand, make sure that egg binds and sticks really, really well. We want to make sure that we have enough to keep the breadcrumbs on. Roll the egg off into the breadcrumbs, dry hand again, move it around, flip it over, some on top, a little press, and out we go, ready to go. And again, now it's just a process of doing this over again until you have everything done. The The nice thing is that we aren't double breading, so this is just a simple straight across procedure. You don't have to go from breadcrumb. Well, again, now I'll explain double breading. Basically, if I take this, put it into the panko, I get that panko all over my crab cake, and then I would put it back into the egg mixture, and then back into the breadcrumbs again for a double thick crust. Now, some people really like the double thick crust. Personally, I find it interferes a little bit with the crab itself. So I'm going to keep it as a single. So we're just going to finish these guys. There's number 4 into the wet. Flip it over, drop that egg on there, pick it up, breadcrumbs, toss it around, flip it around, get that bread all over there. Out we go. And the last one. Put that into the flour, flip it around, knock off the extra, into the egg, flip it over, drizzle some of that egg on there, get it all on there. Really good. Don't worry if it cracks open a little bit, it's not going to matter because you're going to reform it once you get it into the breadcrumb. Grab that into the breadcrumb, toss it around, flip it over. This one broke a little bit, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. Because again, we can just kind of reform it as we're breading it. So, now we have our crab cakes. I'm just going to wash my hands off real quick. But because we kept our dry and our wet hands separate, washing my hands is incredibly easy because I'm not scraping full-blown dough off my hands. Now, these are going to set up. I'm going to put these in the fridge while we make the gazpacho, just so they can kind of firm up a little bit. So when they hit the pan, they're not going to fall apart. There's going to be a little bit of rigidity to them. So those are going to go in the fridge. So we're going to get rid of all these guys here. And now we're going to go into the gazpacho. So like I said, gazpacho, unfortunately, has had a bad connotation to it, mostly because of The Simpsons. I think most people's first interaction with that word was on that show. And unfortunately, the way they described it and the tone of the show made a lot of people kind of go, ugh, gazpacho. I'm not okay with that. Well, I'm going to change your mind today. So I'm just going to clean up that flour real quick off my board. And now we're going to make an amazingly fresh gazpacho. So, one of my favorite things about making gazpacho is that it's all done in the blender. You just get to put everything in here, blend the living daylights out of it, and serve. If you want to strain it to have a very clear, almost consomme style, not clear, but non-chunky, you can absolutely strain this. Put it into a cheesecloth, let it strain overnight. You're going to have this unbelievably fortified flavor. The liquid in the bottom is going to be incredibly intense. However, I recommend leaving the pulp in. Having that pulp and having that texture is one of the best parts about gazpacho. It gives it the body. So we're going to get into the vegetables here, and we're going to make some delicious gazpacho. So I have some very basic things. I have a cucumber, a jalapeno, a red onion, some vine-ripened tomatoes, a little bit of parsley, and a little bit of mint. Now, outside of this, a little bit of salt and pepper. That's it. That's all you need. You can add more, but you can do, this is kind of a base. Now, a lot of gazpachos, like I said, they're garnished very elegantly because it is a very basic and simple process to do this. So we're going to get right into it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to pull these tomatoes off the vine. Okay, we're going to use 4 of those. I'm just going to take my knife, I'm going to cut them in half, and we're just going to pop that root piece out there really quick, just to get that out. Now, again, if you want to, you can leave it in. We are going to be pureeing this down enough to the point that it is going to disappear and it won't be a textural issue. But cooking for as many years as I have, I can't leave those in, unfortunately. That's not something I can do. So I got to take them out. So we're going to get those out of there. This is just another method of doing it, just taking your knife, running it around the top of the stem, inside a little bit. Just pop that sucker right out. So around we go. and out with the stem. So we're going to cut these tomatoes down to quarters, just so we have a good size. We can get everything into our blender without having to worry about it. So we're just going to drop those tomatoes right in the bottom. That will be our first layer. Alright, and those can go all in there. Beautiful. Now that's fine. Alright, next up, we're going to put a layer of onion. So, red onion. A little bit sweet, nice color. We're just going to knock the root, top and bottom off, cut it right down the center. We're going to use about half this onion. So I'm just going to take that outer layer of skin directly off. This one looks pretty good, so it doesn't look like I have to go any more than one layer. So we've just taken the skin and any of that really thin white membrane off the outside of the onion. And again, we are just going to cut this kind of into quarters. I'm just going to run it into an eighth, like this. And then we can distribute that into our blender. The next up, jalapeno. Now, I really like adding spice to my gazpacho, so I will use this entire jalapeno. Just going to knock the tip off of it, split it in half. We're going to pull most of the seed structure out of the jalapeno because we want it spicy, we don't want it hot. There's a very big difference between those two terms. So we're going for spice, we're not going for heat. So we're going to get most of those seeds out as we can. And then again, we're just going to take this, just kind of rough cut it a couple times, directly in. I'm just going to get rid of these seeds real quick. Alright, so the next up, cucumber. Now, cucumber, one of the beautiful things about this is it is somewhere close to 80% water. Between the cucumber and your tomato, that's where all your moisture comes from. If you don't have enough of either, you can always add a touch of water to kind of smooth it out. Now, we're going to use a little, right around half this cucumber, but we're going to peel and seed it. So I've got my peeler. So we're just going to very simply take that outer peel off, because this does get really quite tough and it doesn't break down as much in the blender as we would like it. So we're just going to take all of that skin off there, that out of the way, and then all we're going to do is we're going to cut this right in half. Just take a spoon, starting at the top, and just very simply pull out most of the seed structure. Now you might ask, why am I doing this? Well, because those inner seeds will not break down super fine inside the blender, as well as that's a lot of that extra moisture content, and we're trying to control our moisture. So I like to take the seeds out. This is also how I would make my tzatziki sauce, and then I would grate this. So again, we're just going to take our knife, we're going to cut that cucumber into a whole bunch of nice large chunks, and that's just going to go right in there. Now we're just going to get rid of our seeds over here. And now, mint and parsley. Now the reason I've chosen mint and parsley is the mint adds a little bit of almost an effervescent herbaceousness over the top, whereas the parsley will add a lot of kind of earthiness. The flavors in them are great. They are complementary to everything that's in there. So we're just going to take a bunch of these nice mint leaves. So I've probably got 4 sprigs of mint and 2 sprigs of parsley because I want a little bit more mint than parsley. And actually, you know what? These are really big sprints of mint, so we're going to go down to just 3 of these. We're not going to use that 4th one because those are massive. So we are just going to take all that mint and all that parsley, and that's just going to go directly into our blender. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of pepper. Now, you can adjust the seasoning afterwards, 100%, and I would recommend adjusting it afterwards. Obviously, you're going to taste it, you're going to find out what's going on. So, this is ready to go. So I'm just going to bring this over here and we're going to get that set up. I'm going to get my pan on. Get that starting to get nice and warm for the crab cakes. Because once we blend up this gazpacho, we're going to be making crab cakes. So I'm adding a little bit more than average of oil. I'm using about 4 tablespoons of oil for the crab cakes because I want to not quite shallow fry them, but I want to have enough oil that it does start to creep up on the side. Plus, with the breadcrumbs, you are going to get absorption. So you are going to lose some of that oil into the breadcrumbs. So this now is as simple as we're just going to blend the bejesus out of this. Sorry. Turn it on. Now, we're just going to go for it. So now that we have that blended down a little bit, I'm just going to take my spatula, pop this top. We're going to put the rest of that mint that kind of popped up out of the bucket down in there. And it's looking a touch thick, which means we're just going to add a little bit of water. So I'm going to take a little bit of cold water. Really I'm only going to add a little bit at a time. So I'm going to start with 4 tablespoons, just to make sure I don't put too much in there. Close that back up. And now we're going to blend it again. Now, we're going to take a look, and we're going to see where we're at as far as texture goes. Now, if we look in there, that texture is exactly what you want. Now, it might not be appetizing, but you almost want it as a slurpy texture. You want it so it has almost that crushed ice feel in it. Now, I'm actually just going to zip over to the other side of my kitchen here, just to grab a bowl that we can put this in a little bit later. And we'll come back over here. So right now, that can just kind of go to the side, and that can sit. Now, the beautiful thing about gazpacho is because of what we put in there, because of the citrus, the citric acid from the tomatoes, this will last. It's not going to oxidize. You've got probably about 3 to 4 days in your fridge. You are going to see separation. You are going to see your body flip to the top with your liquid settling to the bottom. Literally all you got to do is give that a really good vigorous stir with whatever ladle you're going to serve it with and into the bowl. Now, as far as garnishes go, fresh herbs, a little bit of creme fraiche, which if you don't have the ability to get actual creme fraiche, you can fake it by taking half whipping cream and half sour cream. A little drizzle on top of that will kind of cut through any of the, if you accidentally over spiced it or anything like that, that will definitely mellow it out. Now that we've got our pan warming up, I'm going to go back into my fridge here and grab our crab cakes. Now, these guys have firmed up just enough that we're going to get them into the pan. Now, I've got my pan on almost full high heat. We are warming this oil up. We're going to get them into the pan really nice and hot, turn our heat down, and we're going to do most of the cooking on the second side. So, now that our pan is nice and hot, move that oil around, we're just going to take these one at a time, and we're just going to place them in the pan. Now, luckily, I've only got 5 of these, and this pan is the perfect size, because the one thing you really don't want to do is you don't want to overcrowd. So we're just going to get all these beautiful crab cakes in there nicely. And we're just going to move some of that oil around. There we go, a little bit more light there. So now so we have it on high heat, everything's warming up. Now that we've got our crab cakes in, we're going to put it down to just around slightly over medium towards high heat to finish the cooking process. They're going to brown pretty quickly in here, then we're going to flip it. The nice thing about these is because the crab itself is 100% cooked, we don't have to worry about any kind of undercooking. We don't have to worry about getting anybody sick by accident by serving them a slightly under temperature crab cake. That being said, obviously you want to serve them hot. crab cakes that are not hot are not delicious. So we're just going to cook these now. Now, again, the beautiful thing, we have this gazpacho. So we're going to take my bowl. I'm going to take out my blender, take my blade out, and now we're just going to take all that beautiful gazpacho, and we're just going to pour that right in there. Now, again, it looks a lot thicker than it actually eats. This is a very light, and there's so much flavor in here that you can serve it anytime. It's great. Like I said, it's great on the patio with a beer on a hot day, serving with a side of crab cakes. It's great as a you could even have it as a drink. Now I'm going to flip these. So we're looking at these already. I can kind of see on the bottom that my panko is starting to brown really, really nicely, just like that. So now we're going to flip them. So take each one of these. Oh, those look spectacular today. So we're just going to flip those. That panko, as you can see, is browning up absolutely beautifully. And that's the one thing I do personally love about panko. Because it is a heavier, more texturally based breadcrumb, it gives you so much more texture, especially when it gets really nice and crispy like this on top. So really at this point now all we have left to do is we just have to cook these on the last side until they're warm all the way through. So these probably need a total, both sides cooking, you're talking about maybe 6 to 8 minutes depending on how big you make them. Obviously, the bigger you make them, the longer you have to cook them to make sure they're warm all the way through. And that's something that you'll find out eventually. So, as these are cooking, this is the time that, like, if you wanted to make a real quick sauce or something to go along with these, you absolutely could. A little tartar sauce, a remoulade, a spicy aioli, Cajun aioli, Old Bay aioli, Old Bay top notch right there, if that's really where it's at. But really, like I said, these are so good by themselves. There's so much flavor. The crab tastes so good that you don't actually need anything with them. And with the gazpacho, you can almost use the gazpacho as a light dip. So realistically now, we're going to take a look at these again and see how we're doing. See how these guys are cooking. I'm just going to pop up underneath. All right, so they are getting really nice and golden brown. These probably have about another 90 seconds to finish cooking before we can get them on the plate and into our tummies. Because, let me tell you, when we set the schedule for today, and crab cakes and gazpacho were on the schedule, let me tell you, I got hungry, and that was a week ago. While this is finishing up, let's chat. Let's have a little talk about what's coming up. Thursday, we are undertaking a little bit of a project. We're making fresh pasta. I'm going to make absolutely fresh pasta from scratch. The noodles all the way from rolling them, cutting them, everything. We're going to serve that with a really nice sausage and mushroom mixture that's going to go on top of it. It's going to be awesome. If you aren't already, and you're just joining us for the first time, please hit that follow button. It helps me out a lot and lets me know how many people are kicking around and who we can kind of get a hold of and have come check out our stream. You can check me out on YouTube. I take the streams and we put them up there. I'm a little behind, but I did get them all down today, so we are going to be putting them up right away. You can search Uncensored Chef on YouTube. You can find me there. You can also follow me on Twitter at Uncensored Chef with 2 F's. Please follow me on Twitter. Interact with me. I want to find out about you guys. I want to know about what you're cooking and what you guys like to eat. Also, if you ever try anything that I make on stream, please show me. Boy, do I want to see that. Lastly, we just launched a Facebook page. Uncensored Chef on Facebook. Really all it is, it's live notifications as far as when we go live for cooking. I will be posting all written recipes of every dish that we make in the stream on that page, as well as links to all of our socials. So, I just turned the heat off of these guys now. These guys are absolutely finished, ready to go. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these, and really, we're done. These are ready to eat. They are just coming off the pan, onto the plate. Now these guys, you should probably let sit for about 90 seconds, just so that inside, especially with the mayo, it's going to be very, very hot. but those are ready to go. You can serve those anytime, and they are ready to eat. Gazpacho and crab cakes, again, great summer meal, awesome for the patio, simple, quick, delicious, and it's something different. When's the last time somebody made you crab cakes at home, or when's the last time you made crab cakes at home? It's probably been a while. But when's the last time you ordered them at a restaurant? Because I can almost guarantee you, if you like crab cakes, and when you go to a restaurant, you see them, you order crab cakes, because they're kind of irresistible. But that's it for us today. Thank you so much for coming and joining us on this Tuesday, an hour earlier. I think we're going to stick with this time as of right now. If that changes, we will be putting out some information on that. But as of right now, 7 o'clock seems to be the time to go. Again, my name is Scott. I am the Uncensored Chef. Thank you for following. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. That's gazpacho. Those are crab cakes. Delicious food. Please try the recipe. Give them a shot. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on Thursday at 7 o'clock.